welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah. It is the end. We are at the conclusion of the WSL season. We're here to talk about it all. This is always such a bittersweet moment, Allie. I have this at the end of the WSL season and at the end of the NWSL season. I have this twice a year, and I get very bittersweet. I think I have a harder time with the end of the NWSL season because it usually also ends around the time WSL goes on break, and then I'm just like, what do I do with my life?
You're like, what do I do? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do. I was talking with some fans on Saturday, and I was like, what am I going to do with my Sundays now? I'm like, my bank balance will forgive me, but what am I going to do with my Sundays now? And then someone mentioned the men's Euros, and I literally turned to them and went, men's football?
Do men play football?
Apparently, we've allowed them to.
Somebody got mad at me like 5 years ago. I tweeted something just like off the top of my head, which is probably never a good way to tweet. I was watching ESPN and they pulled up some highlight from the U.S. men's national team, and I just tweeted, sometimes I genuinely forget that there's a men's version of the U.S. women's national team. And a lot of men got really mad at me.
I think I can name two. We're just going off topic, but I think I can name two, which is Tim Howard and Clint Dempsey. They're the only...
Landon Donovan, you can probably name.
No.
He played in the Prem.
And if he didn't play for West Ham, I didn't care.
Another reason that we can be a little bit more sweet instead of bitter in the bittersweet is that we've got Champions League final coming up this weekend. We're going to preview that. We're going to, of course, do our predictions. And NWSL is in full chaos mode. But without further ado, we're going to get into all of it. And before we kick it off specifically with WSL, we have to take a moment and do something that we haven't done for like 10, 12, 15 episodes maybe, which is talk about our WSL Fantasy League. Thank you to all of you who joined, who were playing alongside of us. Thank you to all of you who actually played, because Allie and I were very bad at it.
We tailed off, let's be honest.
I'm not going to lie. I forgot it was happening. And I also can say that I think I warned everybody that was going to happen. And it happened. When Allie and I were looking up, because we want to shout out the winners, when Allie and I were looking up the results of who won, first of all, I couldn't log in. That took me a moment. And then second, I couldn't remember the name of my team. And that's pretty bad. But I hope it was fun for all of you who played. I had fun when I was playing, and then I forgot about it. So Allie, tell us, shout out the winners.
So we're going to do our top three. So in third place with a whopping 2,186 points is Team Ace. Congratulations. In second place, it is the Queen City Gunners with 2,253 points, but they have led for most of our fantasy league, so it's only right that the winners of the WSL Woso Show Fantasy League is Sussex by the Sea with a whopping 2,285 points. So congratulations, make yourself known on our socials and we'll give you a shout out on there as well. So that is it, folks, for another year. The WSL season ended in not as much chaos as we thought it would. On Saturday, of course, if you're just catching up, Chelsea are your champions for the 5th year in a row. Back to back.
No. Back to back.
To back.
To back. To back to back.
Yeah. As we already knew going into the final day, Bristol City are sadly departing us for the championship, and Crystal Palace will be coming back up. We also saw a lot of goodbyes on the final day, with Fran Kirby's final time in a Chelsea kit, in Viv's final time in Arsenal colours, and most likely and probably Mary Earps' final time in Man United colours.
And Steph Houghton's goodbye.
Which, just a side note, as someone who's followed the women's game for a while, obviously Steph has been a figurehead for a lot of people, and there was a moment at the very end of the Aston Villa game when they found out they hadn't quite done enough, and Steph is just coming off and she's with Alex Greenwood, and she takes the armband off herself and puts it back on Alex Greenwood, and as like passing of the guard, passing the torch. And I think there wasn't a dry eye for anybody who saw that moment.
Those moments always make me cry. When the captain's armband gets passed around in those moments, it always gets to me. We didn't plan to, but I feel like we have to spend just a moment on Steph because she is such a figurehead. And where the women's game was in England when she started her career and where it is now are so vastly different. And she played such a big role. And I think that maybe because she wasn't as big a part of the Euros, her name got, it was pushed a little bit out of the zeitgeist, but I'm happy to bring it back in because she is such a huge part of just the fabric of women's soccer in women's football in England. I got to call it women's football when I'm addressing the history of it in England.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She was a huge figurehead. She's been at Man City for the entirety of the WSL and was one of the big marquee signings for moving in when the WSL was created, moving over from Arsenal. And she will be missed as a figurehead because whether she was getting minutes or not, everybody's talked about what she was doing in the dressing room, the sort of person she was when she was training, when she was injured. And it's sad when you see players of this caliber retire because it is truly an end of an era.
So we're going to get on to this. You mentioned in the final weekend, it wasn't as dramatic as we thought it was going to be. We're going to get on to that in the games in a moment. While it wasn't dramatic as we thought it was going to be, it still ended with two teams even on points. So not as dramatic as we thought, but dramatic nonetheless. As I said, we're going to get onto the games in a moment. But before that, I feel like a fun thing that we did to close out the World Cup was talk about the highs, the highlights, and the lowlights. And so for this WSL season, to close the book, to close the chapter, we're going to go over some highlights and some lowlights. Do you want to do highs or lows first? I feel like it's nice to do highs first. Let's kick it off on the highs. Don't worry, everybody. We've got way more highs than lows. This isn't going to be a bummer. Let's kick it off. Season highlight. For me, I think this is arguably the best title race in recent WSL history. That's a huge highlight.
I can agree to disagree on that one.
What? Tell me how you disagree. What do you think was a better one?
I mean, there's been a few that have gone down to final days. Like, for example, 2 seasons ago, it was between Chelsea and Arsenal. And it was, could Arsenal beat West Ham? Could Chelsea beat Man United? In order for the same thing. We've had close ones.
I'm not saying it was like the closest. I'm just saying this was, in my opinion, one of the best. And it was definitely still one of the closest, but not the closest. It was one of the best ones we've seen in recent years. Yeah, other ones also came down to the final day. Those were fun too, but this was, for me, one of the best.
You can have your opinion.
That is my opinion. All right, keep going. Tell me a season highlight for you.
I think seeing other teams do really well, they may not have got to like the top 3, but to see teams like Tottenham that we've been banging on about for ages, that they've had the ingredients and they haven't quite ever seen it mix well, has happened this year. They got 6th. They've had a great run in games. They got to an FA Cup final. They seem to be really gelling well with their new manager. Liverpool stand out, getting to 4th after just coming up 2 seasons ago from the Championship, having been relegated, and they had a solid first season and then a cracking season this season. They did the double over Man United. They beat Chelsea for the first time in recent history in a thrilling game, 4-3. That's got to be one of the best games and a highlight all of its own.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point.
So it was nice to see some other teams really fulfilling their potential that they've been not quite hitting the last couple of seasons for me.
That's a great one. Next season highlight for me, I think, is so many attendance records being broken. More games at the main club stadium or the men's stadium, whatever you want to call it. Just so much. I mean, Emirates got sold out for the first time. There were so many attendance records broken, and it's in keeping with what we're seeing with the growth of game, but it's always just a highlight to see.
Also, while we're talking about attendance, another huge highlight is to look at Bristol's home attendance because, yes, they had a terrible season. They didn't win a game at home, but they were consistently getting crowds of 5,000, 6,000, 9,000. And that's even when they weren't playing like the top tier teams, which we always see a huge boost in attendance. Like for example, the game against West Ham, they had 5,000 attendance. They were consistently packing out Ashton Gate to make it the fortress that it was, and I hope they do that again in the Championship. They are staying at Ashton Gate, which is going to be huge. So just a huge shout out to Bristol for, despite a lackluster season, really getting behind the team.
Yeah, a huge shout out to Bristol City fans. I feel like we talked about them multiple times on this podcast, and there's a reason for that. They have been outstanding. All right, moving it along. We have a new FA Cup champion. It's always fun when we have a new champion, and that is Manchester United taking the FA Cup for the first time in the history of the women's side. Always fun to have a new one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another highlight for me is seeing some new talent emerging, seeing breakout players. You know, you love to see it when you can be like, I was there when, you know, obviously Grace Clinton's had a cracking season on loan at Tottenham. Maya Letizier's really kicked it up another notch at Man United. Elizabeth Turland over at Brighton. I know that Mike speaks so highly of her, and just
we've spoken so highly of her too.
I know, but phenomenal player. And
fun to watch.
My personal shout out, I have to say, is to Sophia Poor, who is the young 17-year-old keeper. I think she's either 17 or 19, over at Aston Villa, who got thrown on a game against Chelsea because Annalie made a judgmental error, shall we say, and had to take on that and kept it at a really respectable score. She then played at against West Ham and did really well against West Ham. Only in the dying seconds did she concede, and is a huge talent for Aston Villa that I hope they grow and nurture, because she could become a huge standout number one for them.
Moving on to one that it maybe is a little less serious, maybe more serious. I think we're going to take it as less serious. I enjoyed watching the Emma Hayes Jonas Eidevall beef all year long. I enjoyed watching it escalate. I enjoyed the back and forth. I enjoyed when I was watching the game live and there was that bump, that exchange. It's always fun when you see something live and you're like, oh, what just happened? There's no more camera angles. I don't know. I have to wait and see it again on a replay or on social media. It's always fun. I very much enjoyed that. And I don't know. I mean, there's so much, below that we're not going to get into. But on the surface, I very much enjoyed that beef.
I'm going to shout this one out for my Evertonians, which is to see you guys take on the Merseyside derby. That is such a huge game in the women's football calendar, and it's a huge game in your calendar. And you were having not the greatest of time, but to come against your rivals and play at your main stadium to do that, absolutely phenomenal. So well done to Everton for winning the Merseyside derby.
All right, my final one, I'm gonna throw it back to the FA Cup and say, we shout out United, but also to Tottenham. They make it to the final for the first time in the history of the women's side, and also Leicester City. They got knocked out in the semis. I mean, congrats to Leicester City. This entire season has been huge for Leicester City, and I think that them making the semis of the FA Cup is a great next step for them. And it was just fun to see.
Yeah. And then this final one is a very personal one for me, but I'm going to say...
It's a low light for me. I know what you're going to say.
I know, but I have to... Look, there weren't many highlights, all right, for me, but I have to say West Ham beating Arsenal after the 12 times it took us to do it. The best result we managed was a draw against them, and it was phenomenal because it was at home. I was surrounded by my West Ham fans watching it, and there was a lot of Arsenal fans there, and to watch them go silent when Howard's goal went in was just pure magic. So yeah,
moving on to the lowlights, I'll name that one. No, but in all seriousness, for me, like when I think of lowlights for this season, the first thing that comes to mind, probably to a lot of people's mind, is all of the injuries. Mostly ACLs, just so many damn injuries.
Yeah, no, that for sure was such a low light, because you start seeing a player really get into their prime, really kicking it on. I'm thinking of Jill Roord over at Man City, and then to be taken out for half the season and going on seasons. With
Sam Kerr, Mia Fischel, like we can just go down the list.
Yeah, there were so many, and not just ACLs, lots of other little not greatness. Second low light has to be the amount of cards and bad reffing we've seen. Was a lot I'm not going to name any particular refs. Look, I know being a referee is hard. I know that you're not going to get it right 100% of the time. But we need to increase the standard of our referees, because there are moments where calls were made that changed games wildly for one team.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that first game of the season with Man City versus Chelsea, where it ended up 2-2. Imagine if there hadn't been as many yellow cards. Imagine if Man City hadn't gone down to 9 players. That could have changed the title. That could have been the game that meant that Chelsea lost and Man City won it. There are so many decisions. And we've never talked about refs and card decisions so much as we have this season.
True. They came up, and I feel like you and I, we try to avoid talking about it as much as we can until it hits almost this inflection point where we're like, okay, it's at critical mass and we have to talk. We can't talk about this game without talking about it. Right, Allie? So I think you make a really great point about how this isn't also, it's not on the refs. We've talked also a lot about how this is the systems. We had Skip Gilbert, the CEO of US Youth Soccer, on, and we talked about the systems that are in place in the structure to help support referees and create better systems so that we have better referees. And that's really what it's on. All right, my final low light is the fact that I was given just like near heart attacks at like 5 a.m. One thing I'm not going to miss is waking up for like 5 or 6 a.m. games and being given like near heart attacks when I haven't even had my coffee yet. Now we're going to transition to like 9 p.m. Thanks to Bay FC and Gotham. They're going to give me the late night almost heart attacks. But I think I prefer those to the early mornings.
Yeah, and this is a semi-serious low light for me. I'm going to say, just being a West Ham fan at all this season, we had a good start and then it just went really downhill, and then we had a good January and then it went really downhill. I'm just hoping that this is the wake-up call that the club has needed about investing in our women's team, and we don't have to go through that again.
Manchester United versus Chelsea. That's right. We're not done talking WSL. We had to do this game chat because so much hinged on this and the City game. But this was the one that I think surprised everybody. And for this, of course, we've brought in our favorite United fan, my favorite United fan, the only United fan I know. But still,
you keep getting downgraded.
But still would be my favorite, even if I knew more. Our favorite guest host, our favorite correspondent, whatever you want to say. Amy O'Connor, thanks for joining us. Welcome back. I feel like it's been a while, but it's only been probably like a month.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long, but yeah, it does feel like a while. But thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. And obviously, this is going to be a lot to, diagnose in many ways what went wrong for Man United.
I know you well enough to know that you're going to be very fair and very objective and very tactical. So I am going to put you on blast for a second and just tell the peanut gallery that you texted me, quote, "I want to destroy Manchester United for the entire time we are talking."
Yeah, I do actually. There's so much to say about Man United, but I also then said before we recorded this that there was a lot of things that Chelsea did well, so I do want to talk about that too.
So let's do it. For those of you who don't remember, this entire title race came down to the final day. Chelsea needed a win and City needed a win, and if they both won, they would be even on points, and it would come down to goal differential. That's exactly what happened. Everybody did think that Manchester United could play the upset in Chelsea's title hopes. I even texted you before this, Amy, and I was like, well, do you want to win and like hand City the title, or what do you want? And it felt like a slightly a conundrum for United fans, but no conundrum because Chelsea won 6-0.
Can I just interrupt very slightly on that? Because I put this out to a lot of Man United fans that I had, and all of them said option one. They wanted Chelsea to beat Chelsea or draw with Chelsea and hand the title over to Man
so funny.
City.
I feel like you said the opposite, Amy.
No, I think I actually said anybody but Chelsea, because it's just boring, to see Chelsea continually winning it. And it, it breaks me to say that as a Man United fan, because I truly do not like Manchester City. But there's been something about City this season that have made them quite, likable in a lot of ways. To be honest, they've had a lot of adversity. No one backed them to really be contenders for the title this season, but they've really surprised us. With Bunny Shaw, they've had a phenomenal striker, but they've also had lots of other solid attributes. The centre of the midfield, your two wide players have been outstanding. The back four, the goalkeeper, everything has been positive for Manchester City this season. So I kind of was rooting for United to actually show up and do something, but apparently they were still at Wembley. So
that's a good place to start. They really were still at Wembley. I was going to say let's start with Chelsea, but maybe it's better to start with United. I think that's a great way to summarize it, because while there were a lot of tactical blunders, and I think a lot of them were pretty indicative of this entire season for United, mainly this was a mental and emotional lapse. They were absolutely hungover, not literally from alcohol, but from the title and from the FA Cup.
Yeah, this screamed of a team that had nothing to play for versus a team that had everything to play for. We'd had our final last week. We'd put everything into that. Not a great final, I would say. In Manchester United terms, yes, a great final. We won, but it was very much a 5th versus 6th game. And it showed Tottenham's quality were nowhere near as good as Chelsea's quality. Obviously, we've seen that this week. It was just a very lethargic performance, like a team that was hungover. Second to every ball, defensively inept in so many ways. I sort of had to go back and watch the highlights again just to be like, did that really happen? Was Millie Turner that poor in so many instances in 1v1 situations? Why was Millie Turner man marking Myra Ramirez all over the park? I think that Turner has to answer some questions on that. You thought, hold on a second, Millie Turner should man mark Myra Ramirez. Yeah. We're going to go with that tactic, because that really did not work at all. And one of the goals you could see, Millie Turner ended up in the left channel marking Myra Ramirez, and the middle of the pitch was wide open. It was just left wide open, and Ramirez ghosted her, left her for dead, cut it back, tap in. And that's where Millie Turner's supposed to be, in the middle of the park to cut the ball out. Not out wide trying to match Ramirez for pace or power, because she could not do that. She could not live with her. And I know Ali last week praised Riviere on the right side, but she was awful for the first goal. She caught ball watching. She came inside, left her runner. How are you going to leave Guru Wrighton out wide by herself? Because she can put a ball in the box, as she did for the first goal, 90 seconds into the game. 90 seconds. Yeah. Not 90 minutes into the game, 90 seconds into the game.
Now you know what it feels like to be a West Ham fan, because that happened to us multiple times, including yourself. Your team did that to us at our home game. So,
I mean, it's just very disappointing for a club that's just won a trophy, is playing at Old Trafford for the last game of the season. It's a privilege to play there. And, it's the theatre of dreams where players want to play, where they want to go and play. I mean, granted, it's not being kept to a standard it should be, and that's a whole different conversation that we need to have regards to that. But just when you step on the pitch, you should have the pride. The fans showed up for you. You have to show up. You're going to be parading the trophy at the end of the game. Do you want to parade the trophy after losing 6-0 to Chelsea, or putting up a good show in maybe a 1-0 or 1-1, or maybe even nicking it? We've seen Man United play against Chelsea well. We saw it in the Cup semi-final. This was not a good performance by any stretch of the imagination. The two defensive midfielders as well. I honestly thought they got outrun in the middle of the park by Cuthbert. Leupolz were brilliant. Yeah. Zellum was nowhere to be seen. Nowhere.
I agree. I thought the midfield was non-existent. I might go as far to say I think this was United's worst performance of the entire year.
I would agree. I would strongly agree with that. I mean, we've seen Man United perform poorly, but they've not been turned over 6-0.
Yeah. Zero shots on target the entire game. And you say that there's nothing to play for, but I feel like Ali and I talked about this last week. We've seen teams rally behind this concept of we can play the upset. And I don't know why. Obviously, it's probably because they just came off of a title win, but I don't know why United just couldn't rally themselves behind that, especially against Chelsea, a team that's won it 4 years in a row before this. I would love to be that team that played
Man
the upset.
Man United have never beaten Chelsea in the WSL, and they continue with this trend of never beating Chelsea in the WSL. They've beaten them once in all competitions, and that was the Cup semi-final. So Man United struggles against Chelsea are evident. Emma Hayes has the better end of all the United coaches, Casey Stoney and Mark as well.
Do it, Allie.
Speaking of, because I feel like I have to play devil's advocate and talk about the elephant in the room, which is it got announced that Mark Skinner has signed for another year with a possibility to extend that contract. Do we feel like that may have had something to do with it? Because there have been many players that have been very outspoken after leaving Man United about how they didn't get on with him at all, didn't like his tactics, didn't like the way he's played. Fans have been very vocal in the fact that you had a World Cup winner on your bench. She played 22 minutes total this season and played 0 minutes in the last 4 games. Do we feel like that has something to do with how they performed, or do you just generally think it was a hangover from the FA Cup final?
Well, it's actually been widely documented that Mark Skinner doesn't really like foreign players. So I don't know why Manchester United continue to bring in foreign players if he's not going to play them. Why are they scouting people if this is not the type of player that Mark Skinner wants to play? It just seems wasteful. To your point there, Ali. Like, why are we having a World Cup winner in Guerrero sitting on the bench? She's not even getting any minutes. And even some of his decision making, I love Rachel Williams. Rachel Williams has been fantastic for Man United. She's probably been the shining light in a very poor season for us. But to rely on somebody of that age to be your talisman goal scorer is concerning. Russo wasn't prolific, but Russo offered something different. Also, when you've got that amount of pace on the bench in Jasa and in Paris, it just, at some point you had to change it, and we needed runners in behind and someone who was going to stretch Millie Bright, who just returned from injury. Why are we not stretching the channels there? Why aren't we getting runners in behind to test her and see where her legs are, because she's not got a lot of minutes under her. And I thought at some point, just bring those players on, change it completely, change the front line, because Garcia, who was fantastic in the cup final, had 0 success on her side of the pitch. And neither did Mallard, really. They were both kind of ineffective. So I thought, just change the whole front line, bring on a new front three, bring Hayley Ladd in to shore up the middle, at least give us some protection there so it doesn't get even more out of hand, because it was 4-0 at halftime. It was already way past the point of salvaging any sort of result. Let's just make sure that we've got some sort of nous about us in the second half. He brought on Mannion, and immediately Man United scored. Immediately Chelsea scored. Immediately, and it was a laughable goal. I don't know if you guys have seen the 5th goal, but it was absolutely laughable. The way that Millie Turner was again beaten is just, I don't understand. Was Millie Turner drunk still from last weekend? I just don't understand what happened to her.
It was a bad day to be Millie Turner. Absolutely. I wouldn't want to go up against Myra Ramirez one-on-one. She got smacked one-on-one by Myra Ramirez, like you said, multiple times, by other Chelsea players one more time, which kind of leads us on to, we do have to talk about Chelsea. This was Myra Ramirez's return from injury. What a way to come back, and what a time for Chelsea to get her back. I thought she was the star of the show, but I mean, she was one of 5 goal scorers in the 6 goals that Chelsea scored. So obviously, there's more to talk about here. What did Chelsea do well?
Well, I think that obviously Myra Ramirez was the standout player, because what Myra Ramirez did was because we just spoke about this, Millie Turner man marking her, she just drew Millie Turner into areas she didn't want to go into. And when somebody can hold the ball up that well and bring others into play, also can spin and go, because she has a lot of pace. And I think people underestimate how much speed she has too. And they saw that this weekend. I think when you have somebody who's that versatile and pulling the centre-back out, it creates so many more opportunities, because then what you saw was the 2 outside players in Ryan and Canarid were easily able to come either get out wide and get a cross in, or cut in and score. And the second goal was exactly the same, where it was just fed into Canarid through on goal, finish. And I think that the link-up play that Myra Ramirez brought was the one defining factor for Chelsea that really made them 6 goals better. I think that she was just phenomenal in her link-up play, and her finishing was outstanding as well. And it could have been more. She set up many goals. She scored 2 goals herself, and I think that she was definitely the difference. Again, we praised the centre midfielders. They were all so great. I think Cuthbert's been great all season for Chelsea, and Leupolz was also fantastic. So I think that was the difference maker, was definitely Ramirez, and she went off to a standing ovation in around, I think, 65 minutes or something like that. And then Fran Kirby came on, which was nice. Yeah. She got her send-off, and Man United were nice enough to give Fran Kirby a send-off goal. So
it was very kind of United. Yeah. They were like, well, it's the 85th minute. It's 5-0. What's one more? We'll give it to Fran. That was nice to see Kirby score in her final game. And ultimately, I guess I'll pose this both of you. Chelsea win. They get the title on goal difference. Emma Hayes wins a trophy in her final season. And it seems like next year we are going to see a very different Chelsea. We've already seen multiple players say that they'll be leaving after this year. Obviously, a different head coach. Is this going to blow the top of the table wide open? What do you expect out of Chelsea next year?
I do think it's going to be a transition period that I don't know if Chelsea fans are ready for, because obviously Emma Hayes has been there for so long and has been a talisman for them for so long. So I don't know if they're ready for a transition period. But at the same time, is they've still got the same talent for the most part. Like, I don't think any of their frontline starting 11 have announced they're going. It's mainly been players that have been on the bench or haven't even got into the squad. And then they've also got the fact that Sam Kerr will come back from ACL. My official will come back probably the end half of the season back from their ACL. So I do think it's going to be how the players respond to the coach, because we've talked about it. They've still not announced who it is, but we've got it pretty much locked down who it's going to be. And it's Lyon's current coach. And she's a very different style of coach. So it's going to be, how do they deal with that? I think Man City are going to be a huge threat, because Bunny Shaw's injury is only a minor one comparison. She's broke her foot, but is already healing and getting there. They're going to be a huge threat, and I think Man City are going to be the one to watch, and I think Chelsea are going to have to be careful.
I can say to Chelsea fans, and this is going to sound annoying, but I genuinely mean this, from what you just said, Allie, that Chelsea fans aren't ready. As a U.S. Women's National Team fan who won...
Oh, here we go. Here we go, Allie.
I can say the eye roll.
I really wish I wish I had a... I do have a recording, actually. Maybe I'll post just both of your reactions to that.
Carry on, Sarah. We'll
thank you.
Second of glory.
Thank you. As a U.S. national team fan, we won. We were spoiled with our winnings, and it was certainly a slap in the face this past World Cup. And I do think that Chelsea are in store for something relatively similar, unfortunately for them. But fortunately, maybe for competition at the top of the table, I do think it opens up the top of the table in a really nice way.
Yeah, I think I would agree with those statements, especially with Bon Pastor coming in. She's obviously not an English coach, so it's a different style. She's obviously been abroad. She's been in the US, she's been in France, now she's going to go to England. It'll be a very interesting time for Chelsea. I mean, as a Man United fan, I've seen the men's team transition through many, many, many managers now since Sir Alex Ferguson, and that period has not been fun for me, I will be honest. I really kind of hope this period isn't fun for Chelsea women, because they deserve to experience a little bit of sadness and like what the rest of us are also experiencing, because they can't always be successful, and it also builds, it builds strength within the club. But I'm sure she'll get it right at some point. It may be, a year or two. But like Ali mentioned, there's a good point about Manchester City and Arsenal also. I'm very surprised at Arsenal letting Miedemar walk free.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to cover that. We might have to do that at a later date. There's a lot to say.
There's a lot to say on that, because that could be costly for Arsenal, because they don't have anyone as prolific as Miedemar. And I know she's coming off the ACL, but the least they could have done was give her a year, I think. Just give her a year, let her have that year and see what she does in the year, because you owe her that. She's been a great stalwart and a servant to the club. She scored
I don't
goals
think
for
she
fun.
wanted to stay. I don't think she wanted to stay.
You don't think she wanted to stay? I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think that Jonas has her in the plans. I'm going to say that. I don't think he does. If he did, also, why didn't he just start her for this game? The last game of the season, why wouldn't you start her? She scored as well, but like, why wouldn't you just give her the opportunity? I mean, Russo, for God's sake, she's going to play years and years at Arsenal. You can't give Miedema the last game and give her the ovation she deserves to come off the pitch as well. I don't know. It just felt as a bigger conversation, but yeah, it didn't feel right. And if Manchester City do get her, as the rumours are spreading, then I think that could come back to haunt Arsenal, because Bunny Shaw and Miedema up front may work, it may not. We'll see. But because it didn't work with Ellen White and Bunny Shaw, but
Ellen White and Vivian Miedema are very different players.
Yeah,
and I think a Bunny Shaw, Vivian Miedema front line could be just devastatingly lethal. And that the thought of City plus Miedema, it hurts my heart already.
Yeah, if Man United weren't such a shower of SHIT, I would also say we should go in for Miedema, but she's not going to want to come to Man United because it's clear that the owners don't
Mark
care.
on Miedema, that's mean.
Mark Skinner. She's gone from Jonas to Mark Skinner. I mean,
no, that's horrible. Don't do that.
Would you rather go to Gareth Taylor? That's not much better either. You know what? I think you should come to the NWSL.
I don't think she'd go that far. Yeah, I don't think she'd go that far from me, to be honest. I think that would be too much. But yeah, I going back to the whole Chelsea debate, it's going to be interesting, and they're going to have a lot of players come back from injury, but also they're going to have some new players come in. I'm sure the new manager wants to sign people. It'll be interesting to also see where Fran Kirby ends up. She's still got some life in her, and a club will pick her up. Maybe she'll end up in the States. I don't know. That might be Tottenham. I mean, that's a good move for her, to be honest, because Tottenham is very local to Chelsea, and
I think it's a good shout. Yeah.
I mean, it all depends on where Mielda goes as well, because those two are also a couple. So, like, where are they going together is also the thing.
We're gonna have to cut this out, because what? Those two are a couple?
How do you not know that?
Over to Mexico and La Liga MX. Friday, May 24th and Monday, May 27th are the two legs of the final. That's right. There are two legs of the Clausura final to determine the winner of La Liga MX Clausura. That'll be leg 1, Friday, May 24th, and leg 2, Monday, May 27th.
Over to Scotland, and just like the WSL, this came down to goal difference. Celtic just pipped Rangers to the title in the final day with a 13-goal differential. And back in the Champions League, Rangers will also go into Europe this season, taking second place.
Over to France, Lyon bested PSG 2-1 to be your Division Féminine champions. Paris FC won on penalties to clinch the third place and last Champions League spot.
Speaking of Champions League, the Champions League final is this weekend. Don't worry, we will go further into it. However, if Lyon do what many are considering the impossible and beat Barcelona, their Champions League spot will go down to an English team, which means that Liverpool will have a Champions League spot.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Over to the other side of the pond and the NWSL. Now, this is the league that keeps on giving because it is chaos. Sarah likes to call it NWSL After Dark, and
it's not just me. It's not just me. The world likes to call it NWSL After Dark. I just happen to have an appreciation for that. I really do.
And she's not wrong, because I can count on many hands the amount of times I've checked the results and gone, who did what now?
Honestly, it feels even more chaotic this year. That might just be because we're in the thick of it, but I think for me, it feels even more chaotic this year than it did in previous years. We've always had chaos. We've always had NWSL After Dark, but we haven't had it to the degree and at the frequency, I feel like, that we have it this year. I think, that part of it can probably be attributed to the fact that this league is growing, and with more teams equals more chance for chaos, right? We're at 14 teams now. 3 years ago, we were at 10. That's a big difference. I don't know. I feel like we have to, I feel like we talk about this a lot. We got to just say, top to bottom, this league is arguably maybe tied with La Liga MX, but I don't think so. I think this league is arguably the most competitive league top to bottom. And that doesn't mean that it's the best in the world. It means that at any given day, the bottom team can beat the top team. And we've talked a lot about the draft, Allie, and the difference between how the WSL is right now and how sad it feels that probably some of those teams at the bottom will never be at the top, and why. And that while we don't like the draft, it kind of evens things out. And I think we're seeing the results of that. That's just, I mean, that's my opinion. I think it's a mixture of the expansion and just frankly how the NWSL is structured, where it is structured so that the bottom of the table teams can rise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right. Like, we had this conversation when I said about there's going to be no dream ending in a WSL because of the way that's structured, whereas as all of the faults of the draft, it does allow bottom of the table teams to get the pick of the crop. It also works with the expansion draft. It allows them to grab players. I think it's just, yeah, because you'd never know what's going to happen on a given day because you think set teams. So, for example, if we base it on last season, you think that Portland would be up there. You think San Diego would be up there. Seattle would be up there. And then you look at some of these results and you're like, no.
Right. And you're like, why did the teams that finished at the top last year, why are they sitting at the bottom right now? All right, we've got a couple of big things that happened this past weekend. I can't wait to talk about them. We're going to kick it off first and foremost with the fact that Lynn Williams officially became the leading NWSL goal scorer of all time with a goal in Gotham's 2-1 win versus Chicago this past weekend. That put her at 79 goals total, beating Sam Kerr's 78 and Christine Sinclair's 76.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's another player that deserves to have that title. And here's to her scoring some more and extending that lead to make that record even harder to break.
And of course, the second piece that we need to talk about from this past weekend is that Orlando Pride, with their victory from this past weekend, make it 7 consecutive wins. That ties the league record set by Seattle in 2014. Orlando started the season with 3 draws in a row and have won every single game since then. And we've talked about them. I mean, we've talked about them so much already, Allie. They're so fun to talk about. We kind of have a hard time not talking about them right now. But they're going to go for 8. 8 would, of course, beat the record set by Seattle in 2014. Their next game is at home versus Portland. That'll be the first meeting between these teams this year. That'll always be fun to watch because it's, you know what? There's something to be said about, even though Portland hasn't been Portland this year, when a team has been at the bottom for so long, there is still an air about a team like Portland that has been at the top for so long, where you take a league where anything can happen and then you add that layer on top of it, and it does not feel like a given that Orlando will get this win.
No, it doesn't. But you know what? I think, obviously, coming off the back of 7 wins, I mean, who would have put money on Orlando Pride being the team to break Seattle's record? Absolutely not. I think they're going to go in with such a confidence because they've taken down Portland's rivals, Seattle Reign, in such a crazy game. Guys, seriously, if you can watch the highlights or find the full game, watch it because it was madness.
Yeah, you can watch it for free, the whole thing, the whole replay on NWSL Plus.
There you go. Do it, because even if you know the scoreline, even if you think you knew what happened, you don't. watch this game. I think they're going to be so buoyed by that they're going to go in with such confidence against Portland. It's at home as well, so they've not even got to contend with all of the Rosie the Riveter fans out there. Like, oh, mate.
In Barbara Banda we trust. In Barbara Banda we trust.
Yeah. Speaking of teams that are currently undefeated, Kansas City Current are still in there. They're still clinging on. We thought this weekend would be the weekend they'd get toppled, and it was so close.
It almost was.
Yeah, Racing Louisville had them at 3-2, and then it was a last-minute goal to make it 3-3. So they're still undefeated. So who do we think is going to topple first? Who do we think is going to lose the unbeaten streak?
Oof, I think Kansas City will be toppled first, and the only reason I say that is because I feel like teams have been closer to them recently than they have been to Orlando. For example, of course, Racing just tied KC 3-3 this past weekend. The weekend before that, the Current beat North Carolina by just 1 goal. That was a 1-0 win. And while Orlando have also scooted by on some 1-0s, I feel like with how Kansas City started the season, they feel like, to me, they started really high, and not that they're falling, but it's slowing. At least the pace of goal scoring for them is slowing. Whereas Orlando, I feel like they're riding a wave on the upward trajectory still. I'll call it the Barbara Banda boost. But it's kind of 6.5 dozen. I'm just throwing my support to one of them.
I think you're right. I do think it's going to be Kansas that are going to get that first defeat. I just feel like Orlando they're like skating by on 1-0 wins, like 2-1 wins, or occasionally the crazy game. But we've talked about it before, but their defense is so on lock. It is so on lock from the goalkeeper outwards that I think, like you said, it's been closer for teams. Like this weekend, Racing Louisville almost did it.
Yeah, they almost did it.
Almost.
I will say, Kansas City has a fortress, and this draw with Racing Louisville was the first time this season that Kansas City has not won at home, and instead they drew. So if Kansas City continue to play at home, it'll be hard to see them losing. With that being said, they are headed out on the road to play at Utah next. Now, Orlando and Kansas City, you are probably wondering, when are they going to face each other? They're not going to play each other until July 6th, unfortunately for all of us, because I think we would all love to see that while they're both undefeated. But who knows? Maybe they'll both still be undefeated on July 6th. I don't put money on it, but it could happen. You know what? Stranger things have happened in the NWSL.
Absolutely. Just very quickly, a quick shout out to Racing Louisville because they seem to finally be coming together. We've been saying it for seasons and seasons. They are truly the Tottenham of the NWSL. We've been saying for so long with the squad that they have and the depth that they have, why is it not coming together? And this season, it finally seems to be sort of getting there.
Yeah. So are we finally seeing Racing Louisville, the Racing Louisville that we have wanted to see since they joined the league in 2021?
I think so. I think we're there. I think we're getting there.
I think we're there. I really do. I think that it was a lot of turmoil. It was a lot of up and down, and they do seem to have found a good footing, a strong coach that players want to play for, and they're on the upwards. They're on the up and up, and I love to see that. Speaking of joining the league, we have to talk about Bay FC as our final topic in the NWSL umbrella today, because finally, Bay FC, due to other teams, what am I saying? Finally, Bay FC does to another team what has been done to them all season, and that is score a late goal and get a win. Oof, it's been a road. For those of you who have been following Bay FC, it's been, just a roller coaster of emotions, because basically every single game that Bay FC has played, it has at some point looked like they were going to win the game, and then they lose it, and they lose control of everything, and in 15 minutes the game is gone from them. And it's always last minute. It's always just brutal. And finally we see them do that to somebody else, San Diego Wave went up 1-0. Bay FC and Camberos equalized in the 55th minute, and then Bay FC got the winner in the 87th minute. Listen, here's the one thing I'm going to say, Allie. I think it was only a matter of time. If you watch how they've been playing, with the exception of like the first 15 and the last 15, this team has been incredible. And I give them so much credit because I've had the pleasure of being in a lot of their post-game press conferences, and a lot of what is being said is that they are not focused on the result, and they know that if they continue to trust the system and trust the process and know that this is a new team that is still gelling, it will come. And I have never seen such true trust in a process as what we are seeing right now from Bay FC. And I know that those players were starting to get frustrated, but for them to maintain that trust in the process like they have, they really deserve this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And next week we'll talk about what's going wrong with San Diego Wave, because everybody's been talking about Portland's poor start, but San Diego, my friend, poor case.
Injuries. And finally, the Champions League final is this Saturday, May 25th. I repeat, the Champions League final is this Saturday, May 25th. So if you're wondering, what am I going to do now that the WSL is over? You know what? You're going to watch the Champions League final. We've already alluded to it, but Barcelona is playing Lyon, and we've talked about it already, Allie, the history of this matchup. These two teams have faced each other twice in the Champions League final, and both times Lyon have won. Barcelona, we've talked about this in the context of like, is Barcelona a dynasty if they still can't beat Lyon? We're not going to do that now. All we're going to do here is predictions.
Oof, that is tough because both teams obviously have just come away from winning their respective leagues. Both are on a serious high right now. I think I've been backing Barca all this time, but having seen recent matches...
Ooh, I love this.
I think it's going to be Lyon. I've been backing Barca for so long, but then having seen recent performances, I'm going to go Lyon.
Does your heart kind of want Lyon because of what you also just said, that if they win, we get to see Liverpool in the Champions League?
There is an element of that. I'm not going to lie. There is an element of that I would love to see another British team give Champions League a go. But genuinely, having seen performances, and obviously Barcelona have come back from all sorts of things, I just feel like Lyon are just scrappier. And team has the home advantage. Remember, it's a neutral ground. It's in Bilbao. Well,
it is technically a neutral ground. I can't say the word either, so we're just gonna say it's
Bilbao.
Bilbao, Spain. But it's in Spain. So yes, this neutral ground was chosen a long time ago as the neutral ground, but you lead me on very nicely to say, I think Barcelona are finally going to do it. I think third time's the charm. They're finally going to beat Lyon in the Champions League final for the first time ever. And I think the sole reason is because they will feel like they have home field advantage because it will be so packed. I assume it will be so packed with Barcelona fans. And if it's not, and it's in Spain and it's not packed with Barcelona fans, shame on you, Barcelona fans. For shame.
Yeah, it probably will be, but yeah, my head says Barcelona, my heart says Lyon. I'm going to back the French. I'm going to say it's Lyon.
I love when we pick a different team. It makes me happy.
Just because you like bragging rights when you're right.
No, I just think it makes it more interesting when we get the result. I will say, I don't like my heart. I don't feel like I'm pulling for either side. I really don't. And for the reason that you said, with Liverpool being able to make Champions League if Lyon win, for that reason, I would be happy if Lyon won. And on the flip side, if Barcelona finally beat Lyon, I'd be really happy for them because that's a huge mountain to climb. All right. Don't forget, everybody, Champions League final, Saturday, May 25th. It is at noon Eastern, which means it's at 5 p.m. in the UK. And for the rest of you, you do that math. And that is it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. A reminder to head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/TheWoso Show for extra content every single week.
News and Tens up there, Fits and Kits is up there, we put our extra interviews up there. So genuinely, there is so much content for you to check out. So make sure you hit our Patreon, which is at the Woso Show. Make sure you follow our socials because we post all sorts of crazy things there. Polls, news.
I love it.
Opinions. Everything. So make sure you check out our socials, which again are at the Woso Show.
And that's it. Thanks, everybody. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie. Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.